Greetings from New Hampshire. I'm your host, Carla Garrick with Porcupine Real Estate, and my guest today is Calvin B. from our Spotlight town up in Littleton, New Hampshire. Welcome, Calvin.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy you could join me. I haven't seen you in yonks and yonks. So tell me, how long have you been up in Littleton?
So I've been up in Littleton since 2018.
Okay, and do you own a home? Are you in a duplex? What's the situation?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate. I own a home in Littleton, pretty close to Littleton's main street, pretty close to, parks and trails and nature and stuff. So yeah, very, very happy where I am.
And you are lucky enough to be one of those people who gets to work from home. Was that a consideration for you when you were looking in the area?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that led me to Littleton, but I am fortunate enough that I can work from home. I have a home office, so one of my favorite things, is my commute is literally walking down the stairs. It's one of the best commutes you can have. So, very, very happy with that.
Can't beat that. And then, of course, if you want to walk a little further, you can walk to the beautiful downtown Main Street of Littleton. There, folks can see it for themselves back home. So, just in a few words, just kind of describe the vibe and kind of what you like about the town, just generally speaking.
Yeah, so I mean that's a great photo, of Littleton's, downtown and Main Street, and that's really what it is. I mean, Littleton, it pretty consistently ranks pretty high in, best small towns in America or best main streets in America. It really has that kind of Norman Rockwell sort of feel to it. At the same time, I mean, it's not like a museum piece. There's, all the modern conveniences that you could want. There's new and exciting things happening in town. But yeah, it's extremely walkable. That was one of the things was when we were deciding where we were going to end up in New Hampshire, which was, what's a town that is relatively affordable cost of living compared to the rest of the Northeast, very safe, walkable. My wife, she doesn't like to drive. I have a teenage son. It's really nice when he can walk to the library and see friends, or go down to the general store on Main Street. So it's a really, really, really nice community to be a part of.
So that's fantastic. And just for folks who may not be aware, Littleton, New Hampshire is in the North Country. So that's what we down south, flatlanders, as they call us down here, call north of the Notch. It's not that far from where we host Pork Fest. For those folks who follow along with the Free State Project, the Porcupine Freedom Festival, of course, is up in Lancaster, which is maybe that's like 30 minutes away from you guys.
About maybe like 25
Okay.
minutes away to Lancaster. And then getting down to Concord and Manchester, it's about maybe an hour 15, hour 20 to Concord.
Okay,
Um,
so really not a bad commute, and even to Manchester then would be under 2 hours, and that of
oh
course
yeah.
is an airport, for folks who have to fly. But you're also accessible not too far from Montreal in Canada. That's an international city, as well as some Vermont. There are some airports over there as well. But when you had mentioned Main Street, and I don't know that much about Littleton, although I have been there several times. The first time I went, the reason I went is because there is a candy store. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about this.
So Littleton's famous, and you can barely make it out there on the sign, but it is famous because it has the Guinness Book of World Records recognized world's longest candy counter, and that's at the Chutters Candy store. So if you ever make a trip to Littleton and you're on Main Street, definitely pop into Chutters. They have a bewildering array of candy available. They also have fudge. They also have artisanal chocolates. All kinds of
So when
gifts and
when
stuff like
everyone's
that. So
cheating, because sugar is a drug and everyone should
hmm
use it responsibly, but to the extent that you're on holiday
hmm
and you want to just go check it out, Chutters, I've stopped in there over the years. They actually have a measurement, if I remember correctly, on the actual counter, maybe with the
yes.
lines, and just overwhelming, the smell, the colors. It's just a delight. It's really great for photos too, for folks who care about about Instagram and that kind of stuff, it's a really fun place to visit. Making a wild jump from sugar to a brewing company. I think you mentioned that this is one of your favorites. Tell us a little bit about Wild Bloom.
Yeah, so Wild Bloom is a tasting room for a local craft brewer. New Hampshire has had this absolute explosion of craft beer in the last couple years. Um, and then downstairs from Wild Bloom is Little Town Brews, which actually they sell hundreds of different types of micro brews, craft brews, all different styles, some from all over the world. So, it's really, really, really quite the nice selection, and the owners of both businesses are, very, very nice gentlemen. So
Wonderful. And
definitely
it's
like
great
stopping
to
in there.
give the local businesses a great shout out. Of course, New Hampshire is now quite renowned for its nano breweries and microbreweries, and part of the reason for that was years and years ago, the early wave of pioneers and free staters who came. That was a actual issue that folks worked on, and they said, hey, why don't we allow this decentralized market to bloom? People were home brewing in their basements and in their garages anyway. So let's, sort of make it more formal and let people do it on a scale where they could trade and sell. And so we've seen this wonderful, blossoming of of microbreweries and nano breweries in New Hampshire. Now, you had also mentioned your son is able to walk to the library.
Yeah.
So tell us, I think there's like some famous library there too, right?
So if you see right there, that's Littleton's library. It's actually one of the original Carnegie libraries, if anybody's
Wow.
familiar with that. And then right there in the front lawn, you can see that there's a statue of Pollyanna. So the author who wrote Pollyanna was born in Littleton, New Hampshire, lived there for a good portion of her life. And even though the book is technically set in Vermont, the town draws a lot of inspiration from Littleton. And, Vermont's not that far away. So it's one of the things to celebrate, the local authors, the local literature. And then also, if you've ever read Pollyanna, the whole be glad. So Littleton often is referred to as the glad town. And you'll see posters and things like that telling people, hey, be glad, have that Pollyanna, positive attitude.
Off Main Street, there are a few other things.
Yeah, so this is not technically on Main Street. Once you go past Littleton's Historic Opera House, it turns into what's called Union Street. If you keep going up Union Street, you'll eventually come to Lahoots Ski Shop. And this is actually the oldest ski shop in America.
Oh,
It's been
wow.
operating for over 100 years. It's still a family-owned business. The descendants, the Lahoot family still runs the business. And they've actually expanded. They have some locations in Lincoln now. They have another location on Littleton's Main Street, but all the ski stuff is still in the original ski shop. So if you're into skiing, and there's a lot of amazing skiing in the North Country and surrounding region, definitely come into Lahoots and check it out.
Yeah, and this is a little kept secret. Maybe not so much so in Littleton, but definitely in Lincoln, that you also just mentioned, is you can get out of the cities in New Hampshire and be in a town that feels like a European ski town, just by virtue of it being near the slopes and having this sort of ski outdoorsy adventure vibe. So you can really, in New Hampshire, within an hour, go from where I am in Manchester and have a international experience just by driving, an hour away. So, there's
Absolutely.
really this quality of life, I think, that people don't know. And I could tell you, sometimes people are like, stop telling everyone how awesome it is.
Well, the funny thing you mentioned that, because, back in the, late 1800s, this region, we still have a dairy industry, of course, but it's much smaller than it was historically. So given the large dairy industry coupled with, the mountains and the skiing, northern New Hampshire was often referred to actually as the Switzerland of America, or the Switzerland of the Northeast.
All right, what do we have next on your list?
So I kind of circling back a little bit to beer. So one of the other businesses in town, which is also a craft brewery, is Shilling. So what's really neat about Shilling, and they have a fantastic restaurant with wood-fired pizzas and all that other stuff. But they do a form of craft brewing which I think is kind of unique. A lot of craft brewers in America, obviously, they're doing American style, IPAs. We have New England IPAs. We have West Coast style IPAs. We have other, American style brews. What's really unique about Shilling is they take sometimes very little known, especially in the United States, or even sometimes quite obscure European styles of beer, certain Czech
Mm.
styles, German styles, Central European styles of beer, and they produce them right in Littleton,
Oh, wow.
and then release these beers that have just sort of something that you're not going to have every day unless you take a trip to Prague or something like that. So really kind of interesting if you're a beer person, and you really want to try something besides, some kind of style that you haven't tried before,
You
recommend
want
going
the
over to Shilling and having some
Gewürztraminer
of their
instead of
making.
an IPA. You can get it in Littleton, New Hampshire, because we are bringing a little bit of Europe to the North Country, it sounds to me like.
Yeah, and they have an amazing Oktoberfest every year. So if you can, I mean, it's pretty crowded, but if you can get a ticket to Shilling's Oktoberfest, highly recommend.
Wow. And of course, that is a fantastic time of year to come visit. For folks watching this, October is high season, late September, October, high
Mhm.
season with the foliage. I mean, people come from all over the world. It's hard to beat. And I will give a shout out to my friends. The Fentons do a beautiful cryptocurrency event. That'll be September 1st. So that's a little early, but maybe if folks are coming for that, be sure to actually take a trip and go see all these other places all over the state. New Hampshire is also beautifully just the right size for a little country that you can
Mhm.
kind of get around and have these experiences in these different areas. We have maybe 2 or 3 other things we're going to cover,
Yeah, of
and
course.
then we will let you get back to your wonderful day. How about this coin company?
Yeah. So one of the things that a lot of people might not quite realize about Littleton, because we do have this quaint, charming Main Street, is we also have a really nice industrial park. And one of the largest employers in the industrial park is the Littleton Coin Company, which is now an employee-owned business, but it was a small family business that basically sells coins, collectible coins, to people who, let's say, you want to collect all the different, I don't know, Lincoln pennies, or let's say you want to collect Morgan silver dollars, or whatever type of, mostly with a focus on US currency. If you are a coin collector, then they are the largest mail order business in the United States for that. So what's really neat also is if you go and visit, they have a tour, and part of their tour is they have their own currency museum that they put together. And it is not a super long tour, but they have some really, really, really interesting things in their currency museum. So they have some extremely rare currency from early colonial America, or from the first few years of American independence. They have, of course, continental dollars, always interesting to see. They have ancient Roman, ancient Greek coins. They even have an example of Yappy stone currency, which
Oh,
is where
wow.
you have the giant stone with a circle in it that was traded on the island of Yap. So they really do a pretty thorough job in their currency museum. So if you ever have a chance, go check it out.
Oh,
And of
that's
course, if you go visit, anything that's available in their catalog, you can also buy in person. And guess what? If you buy it in New Hampshire, it's tax free.
nice. Nice little shout out there for one of the things that makes this an amazing state to live in is we do have the opportunity to keep more of our money. Of course, there's no state tax, and there's also no state income tax. No sales tax, no income tax. All right, the last two here sound like they have to do with getting outside and getting some exercise, because that is also a feature of New Hampshire, of course, is that we have
Right.
this incredible nature.
Yeah, so I mean, as being part of the North Country, I mean, we have access to some of the best outdoor recreation in North America, period. It's not just skiing, anything that you like to do outside, hiking, swimming, ATVs, shooting sports, snowmobiling. I mean, whatever you want to do, there's places in the North Country where you can, participate in those things. So it's really nice. And Littleton in particular is, it's really well known for mountain biking. So we have a trail system which is privately maintained, called the Parker Mountain Trails. And what's really nice about this is, I mean, it's miles of trails that you can hike on, of course, but you could also ride a mountain bike. In the wintertime, people use the fat bikes with the snow tires on them.
Mm.
And you can go all the way, up to the top of Parker Mountain, and then, also the surrounding foothills. And of course, there's a bike shop right in town, should you want to rent a bike or, get work done on your existing bike. So
Nice.
and that's just right there in Littleton. So there's a lot of outdoor recreation options available. Ice skating. I mean,
And of
ice
course, for
fishing year round. There's always something to do.
Absolutely. And of course, because we have the beautiful four seasons, that also gives people options, right? You can literally be on a mountain and have a different experience, whether there's snow or mud or, biking, snowmobiling, all of that great stuff. And then, of course, we also have water sports here. It's like we're
Hmm.
so spoiled on land, and then we get to do equal amounts of fun on the water. So I believe there's the Moore Reservoir.
There's a picture right there of
Wow.
the dam which created the Moore Reservoir. So originally, this was actually one of the longest whitewater reach stretches of the Connecticut River. So this is the upper reaches of the Connecticut River. Um, when this dam was built, it created the Moore Reservoir, which is excellent for if you wanted to go boating, if you wanted to go kayaking, canoeing, fishing, what have you. Almost the entire shoreline is owned by, I believe believe it's owned by the same entity which owns the dam itself. So the shoreline has not been developed; it's not commercialized. It's still nature. So definitely nice and relaxing to get out on the Moore Reservoir. Now, what's really nice about the hydroelectric dam is that it creates, of course, a domestic, renewable, clean source of energy, but it's also relatively affordable. So Littleton is kind of unique in New Hampshire in that we have the Littleton Water and Light Company. So the electricity here in Littleton is actually the cheapest electricity in New Hampshire. It's probably about half of what you're going to pay with Eversource. So that's one of the reasons why Littleton has that industrial park, is that if you're operating a commercial business that needs a lot of energy, it's natural to set up shop in Littleton and benefit from the cheap renewable hydroelectric power. If you are doing any kind of mining in New Hampshire, it would be the most affordable spot
It
to do
would
it
be
for
the
sure.
place to do it. Well, Calvin, I am so delighted that you could join me today. Any last thoughts for our viewers?
No matter where you end up in New Hampshire, I think the most important thing is getting here. When I first came to New Hampshire, I didn't live in Littleton. I lived in a small town in southern New Hampshire, and there's nothing really wrong with the town, but for me and my family, considering I like to be in an area where things are a little more convenient. So when I'm right in town in Littleton, I can go to the grocery store within 5 minutes. I can go out to eat within 5 minutes versus being in a very, very rural area where it takes, maybe 30 to 45 minutes, to really get somewhere. So that's the thing, is when I first came to New Hampshire, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted or where I wanted to be. So I think the most important thing is getting here. And then New Hampshire is accessible enough to where once you're here, you can go explore the other parts of the state. I can tell you it's really strange. The first time I came to Littleton, I pulled off the internet, or the interstate rather, and I was actually looking to try to get to the Walmart, and it was very, very late at night, and I made a turn too early and actually went through Main Street. Never been to Littleton before in my life, and I saw the Main Street even at the middle of the night, and it's completely, all the stores are closed, nothing but the street lights on, and I thought to myself, this is a really cute little town. I wonder what it's like to live here. And
Mm,
this was well before I ever, saw that a house was
right. And
available
we
in
could
Littleton or talked to my wife about where we wanted to raise a family. So it's just interesting how things work out. So my advice is get here first. And then once you're here, you can always refine a little bit later where you want to settle down.
Kelvin, I think that's great advice. I concur. Get here. If you can't, come to all our events, come to Pork Fest, come to Liberty Forum, come to the FSB deck. There are things going on all the time. Listen to that little voice telling people, right? So when a town speaks to you, make a note of it. Let us know. Calvin, I really appreciate your time today. You have made me want to go visit Littleton again. It looks like a perfect little spot for a great great, great quality of life. For folks watching, you can reach me at carla@porcupinerealestate.com, and we will be back again soon with another spotlight from some fabulous place in New Hampshire. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Carla.